All right. Hey guys, thanks so much for joining me today over the summer. I know you guys are super busy, especially Katie, you're on vacation. So thank you so much for joining me to kind of get together and talk about how we can update our campus walkthrough forms to really help the teachers get the feedback they want and for us as administrators to get the information we need as well. So just for the record purposes, I am Amy Adams, the assistant principal.
I'm Mary Borghese, first grade Virtual Academy.
I'm Quincy Rhodes, first grade Virtual Academy.
And Katie Flores, principal Virtual Academy.
All right, so as we know, we just finished up our very first year of the Virtual Academy, and it was brand new in so many areas, and we kind of just did things kind of by the seat of our pants to make it work. So we did have the walkthrough form that we used last year where the main focus was just on what are the teachers doing and documenting that and getting feedback from the principals. And the documentation wasn't really as targeted as some of the teachers said they needed. So we're going to kind of look at what we can do to make our walkthrough form even better this year. So that's what we'll talk about. So, and we're going to look at our campus improvement plan and some of our goals that we have as a campus this year to really target those areas on the walkthrough form. So did you guys get a chance to look through those STAR scores?
Yes, so our reading STAR scores were down a bit. And so I think our focus might be working on guided reading, more specified instruction. What do you think, Quincy or Ms. Rhodes?
I can be Quincy. I think the same in math, that our math scores are down, and we're really going to be working on some targeted small group instruction, pulling apart some of our lowest strands to try to figure out how we can fill in some of those learning gaps.
Yeah, I agree. So just as a campus as a whole, we're really going to focus on making it work virtually. And we know that we can do it even more so than last year, is just making the time to dedicate that targeted small group reading instruction like the rest of the district is doing, and implementing the guided reading plans for each group, as well as looking at the MAP data and the STAR data with math, and focused on those targeted interventions with small group math, which we're going to make work virtually as well. So that's kind of our campus focus. So thinking of, you know, Mary and Quincy as teachers, when somebody comes in your room, I'm going to come back to you in a minute, like knowing that as a campus, we are really focusing on those two areas and the small group reading and small group math, like what do you want? What kind of feedback would be helpful to you from a principal when they're in your room? And like Katie, like for us to be thinking about is like, what really exactly are we going to be looking for, and how do we want to document that, you know, on our form?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to think about, you know, from an administrator perspective, when I walk in a room, I want to make sure that the learning objective is posted, that the kids know what they're learning. That of course we're, you know, following the curriculum plan and the TEKS, but also that we understand our data, being STAR scores, but also the MAP, you know, the most recent MAP data, and are we making sure that what we're doing is based on MAP data, formative, summative assessments, things like that. So I want to make sure that we're very intentional with how we're teaching and why we're teaching what we're teaching.
Yeah, so I was kind of just making a, you know, jotting down some notes earlier today about how we want to show that on our walkthrough form, you know, and so we'll probably use the Google form like we did last year. So when we go in, it's just easier for us to do, or of course we'll first, you know, say the teacher's name, our name, the date, the time of day. And then I think you're right. The first thing we need to look for is the evidence of the learning target. Do you think we can just click like a yes or no? Or do you think that we can, you know, take the time to write out what that is? Like as teachers, does it matter? Do you want us just to know that we saw it?
From a learning perspective, it's important for the learning objective, not just to be explained, but to be pulled apart. Each lesson, I feel like that should be something in the Google form that, did we explain not just that we're working on two-digit addition, but did we explain what is the purpose of two-digit addition? How could you possibly use it outside of the classroom? Or some of our learning techniques are just so dense that they really, especially the first grade level, need to be pulled apart into, you read the wording and then you pull it apart. What does it mean? What does decompose mean? Can we make up a little song with it? Can we do some hand gestures with it? I feel like there needs to be a little bit more than just, is the learning objective posted somewhere where it's visible?
Oh my gosh, I love that. So if we put, like on the form, like learning target, yes or no, and then we can just, I think just like a spot for notes where we could just add like what the learning target was and whatever we see, like, oh my gosh, yes, this was the learning target. The teacher demonstrated it by using a real world example or by a hands-on activity, or like you said, a song. And that way we're not held down to some specific language to use. We can just kind of jot down notes about how we saw the learning target in the classroom.
And that's what I was going to say, because you don't know when you're going to be walking through.
Mm-hmm.
So I would hate to say no, that something's missing if I just missed them teaching. So that, that to me is something, kind of find out maybe in a post conference, or, just the teacher and walking through enough and making sure you're there at the beginning of class if I'm concerned about a teacher. But you can also tell when the kids are responding or the way they're responding,
right?
If they understand what they're doing.
That's what I was thinking. Maybe student feedback, taking note on that, as well as meaningful questions that have to do with the objective as well, especially the form.
I love that. So that'll be a really big focus. And I think it'll be a cool way too, for when we are looking back over the walkthrough forms and we can see different ways teachers are verbalizing the learning targets, and we can kind of share those ideas, maybe like in a staff s'more at the end of the week or something like that. Like, hey, here was a great way we saw this learning target in a classroom this week. So
it's good, very helpful.
Love it. Okay, and then for the next part, we want to kind of like last year we talked about the evidence of the student learning or what the student was doing. So we kind of said the students were, and then we had that drop down menu where we can kind of check off what the students were doing. So if we're focusing on, let's look at guided reading first. If we want to just brainstorm like a list of some things that we might, or I could put in that drop down menu for what we are looking for or what you would want to show us when you're doing a guided reading lesson.
Would this be like a students were and then check all that apply, or are we going to
Oh, well, I don't know. I was thinking all that apply. What were you thinking?
I would think all that apply, because I guess it depends on what the purpose is of the question and how broad you're going to be with the answer. So, are you going to say like students were engaged or not engaged? Students were, attentive, like, I would prefer the check all that apply.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it gives you more space to give feedback, and it's
yes,
versus just an all or nothing.
Right. And so this is kind of why I want us to have this meeting, because like I was learning in my classes last year, sometimes one of those books I read, the Breakthrough Principles, where when you have that list and then we check all that apply, sometimes there's those teachers who are perfectionists, and if you go in their room and they're doing a great lesson and they're doing like 6 out of the 10 things, then what they're going to want to talk to you about is like, well, I really do those other 4 things, but you just didn't see them that day. And really you're like, no, I don't have to see all of them all the time. So that was kind of a conversation of like, but I think we should do the, check all that apply and just really make sure people understand we're for sure not looking to see every single thing every time we walk into a classroom.
And it might, as a perfectionist myself, it might help if we even start it with, at the time of the walkthrough, I saw students were,
I like that.
Students were observed, check all that applied. That way, I wouldn't look at that and go, oh, they must think that I never have students that are engaged, or I never, like what if it's my turn to demonstrate for the students and that's the only 5 minutes they were in, or, however long, but I think it's important to be intentional even with the form, because
Yes, I agree.
how teachers are going to receive the feedback as well.
Mm-hmm.
Would help me in the teacher's shoes.
Yes. So, so the students were, something where they're working whole group, working in a small group. Like, are they reading independently? Like reading with a group? Are they doing word building? Like, and if it's whole group, then we're obviously not going to use everything else in there, because like I said, we're really trying to focus on hitting their classrooms in that small group time. So what do you think the students would be doing? Some different sort of learning targets that they're doing during a guided reading group.
Are you asking?
Yeah, go.
Oh, are you asking like what would the classroom, what would everybody look like? Because I'm envisioning stations happening while.
Right. No,
is that
I mean,
kind of where your question's going?
No, like if I come into your room and we're really focusing on improving our small group guided reading, so I'm going to pull up a chair and sit and observe not the rest of the kids like I would do at a different point, but we're really focusing on what you're doing with those kids in guided reading. So just thinking about like the Jan Richardson like teaching model that we're using, what are some different strategies you'd be using with the kids? So kind of like, reviewing sight words or doing word building or spelling patterns, like reading to work on fluency or comprehension strategies, different things like that we really want to pick like 4 or 5 that we really think would help our kids the most to look for.
I think beginning with that prior knowledge kind of review at the beginning is what I always do with my students. And I feel like that helps them also attaching what we've learned in the past or in the day before. So kind of getting them ready to learn with stuff that they've already been familiar with, whether that's word building or spelling or I guess.
Yeah, that's really good. Like you're setting up the lesson in small group, like this is what we're doing.
And that would kind of be the engage as well. I feel like when you're engaging students, they want to make sure you're not losing them right away, because the lesson, the bulk of the lesson is going to be where we really want them to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I guess we can just say small group reading, maybe working on like story retell or comprehension strategies.
Mm-hmm.
Right, small group reading. And then I think I'll just put something like phonemic awareness. I know, like, especially in the lower grades, we're going to spend a lot of time filling in those gaps with phonemic awareness.
Love it.
And if you guys think of anything else, like, just feel free to email me and we can go through and add things as we go. And then, so kind of the same thing for math. Like if we come in during a math time and you're pulling a math small group, what are some things that we want to focus on that we're looking for in the classroom?
At the first grade level, I think I'd be starting with making sure that we all have a really strong understanding of number sense. So using a lot of manipulatives, making sure we're connecting the dots on numbers and representations. What is our understanding of what it means to be adding and subtracting, and not just the vocabulary, but using actual manipulatives to put it together and pull it apart. So I think small groups would really be a lot of targeted instruction with manipulatives.
I like that. So I'm building numbers, like number sense, manipulatives, and even that I think the number sense too would go all the way through. It's just the number sense looks a lot different in those upper grades, whether it's doing expanded form or those TEKS that they're working on. So probably something with problem solving. I'm drawing a blank right now, like word problems.
And some strategies of word problems. When we're reading this word problem, before we can even begin, we need to pull it apart. What is it asking us to do?
That's good.
And I mean, do we need to, and this would be, I think, for reading too, but especially for math, like practice, like the ability to practice and be given feedback in the small group setting to give them kind of, I mean, clearly not all this would be in there, but I think they need the ability to practice in the small group to give, because they may be in a group that's leveled like them. And so this kind of gives them a safe space to practice and, you know, make mistakes and also be given feedback. And it helps us too, I think, because we see it after they're done, we don't catch where exactly they're making the mistakes. So I think that might be for both reading and math, but to help that we're able to provide feedback in that small group.
Yeah, I really like that. I think wording it something like they're practicing independently or slash showing learning, like on their own, is a really good evidence of learning. There we go. Showing learning. And I think too, for math, something we talked about too is, you know, sometimes we use that small group time for a spiraled review. So are we like reviewing concepts we've previously learned? All right. So I think that's a lot of really good information. And then of course, so just to kind of recap, and this is, again, just the top of my head. So we'll just kind of put it all together and I'll send it out to you guys. We can use this as a working document, but just the Google form, like at the top, the observer's name, the teacher's name, the date, the time. The first thing we want to talk about is the learning target. And then we'll have that comment section where we can just kind of share our feedback about how the teachers were using and teaching the learning target. And then we'll have two sections on for small group. So for the reading small group and the math small group, and then we'll have a spot at the end for additional comments or things that we saw in the classroom.
Perfect.
Any other ideas? Or I guess if you guys think of anything, just let me know. Because Katie, I know you mentioned like using data and making sure we're doing all that kind of stuff. So is that something we could maybe talk about like in that conference with the teacher? Or
yeah, I think yes. I mean, I think that because we want to know what the data is showing, and maybe that's something we discussed in collaborative planning or PLCs, you know, the week before, so we know what to look for. So maybe, you know, it might even be beneficial for us, you know, we talk, like Ms. Borghese said, about like activating prior knowledge. So maybe for us, before we, you know, walk in, you know, say like, what do we expect to be seeing? Like, what did the data show, or what was on their plans ahead of time? But then I don't know if somewhere on the form we need to say something about the fact that we're in a virtual environment, because if we're in small groups within the virtual environment, then where are the other kids? Are they in breakout rooms? And then do we need to be looking at those? I mean, I don't want to get too in the weeds during a walkthrough. But I want to be able to give feedback during a walkthrough without having to have a conference every time as well. So how do we kind of wrap that in, especially for our teachers that are doing great things, and highlighting those great things. Like if I have a teacher that's doing a small group and I'm on a traditional campus, I can walk into their room and I can see what every other kid's doing. And I can see if their stations are going well, or if their kids have expectations for each station. But in a virtual room, I probably want to go to those breakout rooms and see what the kids are doing and make sure that they're still on task. So I'd love in the forum, again, I know we don't want to get too in the weeds, but I also want to make sure that we are trying to stick to traditional as we can, without, because there is a lot different with the virtual. But how do we reinforce what they're doing well and also offer guidance if there is an area that may need assistance? I don't know if But
No, you are. And so I think we should do a section where it says other students are.
yes, I love that. Yes.
And then just kind of, again, leave that open comment section to kind of give us that freedom to write down if we're able to go in there because, and again, it's been a few months since we've been in school, but I'm trying to think of like when you enter our Zoom or when we enter your Zoom, you have to click a button, right? And just, drag the admin into the breakout room and things like that. So just to check in with the staff that everyone's good with. Hold on. Like it's, like it's a little different, like where the principal can just walk around and see the groups when you're like, hold on, which group do I put them with?
Mhm. Mhm.
And then how do we know you're ready to leave and go to a new one?
True.
So,
Well, if they join as co-hosts, do they have breakout room? Can they navigate breakout rooms if they're the co?
Got free reign. Yeah. I think it's,
Oh.
if you're the co-host, you can go
Oh.
kind of to the breakout rooms. If
Oh.
you're the host. You don't have
I
to
know.
take
I need to like play around with that again because I feel like we were so good at it. Now I'm drawing a blank. So yeah, so that's something to double check. But it'd be so much better if we had the co-host controls and could just move around. And that would just be like a classroom then, just moving around as we need to. And
Yeah.
the teacher wouldn't have to worry about, hold on, did I kick him out of the breakout room or did I?
Right.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They need to be. So, all right. Well, I'm super excited. And I think this is going to be really good to have these more targeted like intervention strategies and doing all of the things on our campus that they are doing at the traditional campus and just really having some really good small group time this coming year.
I agree.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for meeting with me. I'll see you guys soon.
See you soon.
Bye.